You go ahead, I'm gonna go ahead. So you want to say, these are the guys with the tow company. And this is what I mean is they take up, look at all this, they're a business, a private business. It looks to be off the books. And what helps them maximize their profit is utilizing public resources like public parking for business commercial equipment, which is a violation of city ordinances. If they're reasonably, they're supposed to take it to some place, just like, you know, if that was the case, all these people with food trucks will be able to park their food trucks wherever the fuck they wanted. That kind of thing. Semi-trucks, there'd be any guy that worked at a semi-truck, he could be able to park it, because I mean, that's just one level below a semi-truck. So, and that's one thing is what I said, being parked around my house, like I got the last couple days, blocking that whole, not the whole street, but I mean blocking at least 50%, if not 55 to 60% of the actual street because of the size of the vehicle on the little side street is new. I mean, that's just started happening in the last week and a half. So, but so now the 3 vehicles is a tow truck that has the license plate concealed in the tinted window. The Cadillac Escalade that was in front of the trailer that doesn't have a license plate, that's towed by the truck that has a concealed license plate and no bed. It's like the bed has been taken off of the full-size truck, and then you saw that was a dually with the bed still on it. These are all luxury vehicles, not luxury but high-end vehicles for the tow. So this is what I mean is this not just some small douchebag, and what they tow is the other issue, is they tow luxury vehicles, which means, and like I was right, they look white. They don't look, I mean, Armenians consider themselves white, and white people occasionally consider them white, but for the most part, they don't. And as a matter of fact, oh, you know what, I'm going to show you something else too. Since I'm here, I'm going to see a movie. So, like I said, this barbershop, next to this barbershop is a woman's shop, okay? Now, I came by here, and I've suspected for a while, and I came by here and I made a video the other day and I posted it, that I suspect that the women's shop is a fentanyl manufacturing front that's run by the guys that own the barbershop. And one of the guys in the barbershop just came to the door and looked at me because I'm holding my phone to see that I'm recording and walked back in. So, the next day, the woman's shop had the door open and a sign affixed to it advertising walk-ins available. But then that was the only day I've ever seen it open. And today, as you can see, is the same situation that the women's shop is just the front. Now, if you look online, they have pictures of it inside, and like the next day, because I have my come see movies, 3 movies a week, and this is my general route because this takes me to all 3 theaters. I normally don't go to the big theater because all of the seats are regular seats, and my butt can only take like 30 minutes, and it starts to hurt. But I want to get an earliest movie possible, and that is an 11:55 movie. And it's only at the big theater. Good. Good. All right. And so I come this route typically because I want to avoid. Oftentimes I come in the afternoon and I just avoid the school, which is the next block up, which is the easiest route. If I come after 5 o'clock to a movie, I generally walk down that way. So I'm down here pretty frequently. And like I said, out of all those times, and I mean, other than that, when I used to ride my work and I ride my bike to the hospital, or coming back from the kitchen when I work in the kitchen at the end of the year, I've only seen that beauty shop open one time, actually open. And that happened to be after I publicly stated that I believed that it was a front operation for a clandestine fentanyl lab. And then today, because this is the other thing that I see on Glen Oaks, is what I notice in my observation is that when I go by, you have the Armenian shops that have the high end, they're all glitzed out and glamored out, and they have all this product, and they look very, very successful businesses. Well, the catch is, as far as the clientele goes, they have, most of the time, they only have employees, like 1 or 2 employees sitting inside of them. One of them is, but there's an Asian one, and the Asian one always has, it's busy. It's a business. So another example that I was, the busiest one of those shops on Glen Oaks that are run by Armenians is the one. It's the biggest one too. It takes up like right next to Domino's. It's the most expensive one. You could tell that it's for the location it's at and what it offers, the technology that it offers. It's a multi-billion. I'm sorry, stupid. It's a multi-million-dollar facility just alone. So what they charge, I don't know. I mean, it seems to be, like I said, almost quasi medical grade beauty applications. Now, that one tends to have a customer flow, but in my opinion, for the size and the expense of the business, I mean, it still looks pretty lackadaisical. Now, so my thing is, those are all because the one thing that even the FBI states, and this is even the Mexican Mafia, La M, what I learned from Mundo, who was the guy that snitched, that became an informant, and then revealed everything about the movie Mexican Me. He was a consultant to Edward James Olmos. Is that in 1993, the Mexican Mafia started to take notice of, well, there's a lot of beef going on between the Mexican gangs in Burbank. There used to be a Burbank Locos or something like that, and Glendale gang, West Side Locos. They were all 13 gang. And Vineland, that was in Sun Valley, and North Hollywood Boys. In fact, I remember in high school that there was still remnants of the beef, because like my friend, he was he was a raver, not a raver, what do they call them, rebels at the time. So it was like a Mexican cowboy, like a greaser kind of thing. So he had a green Honda Accord, like a 4-door, like a 91 or something like that. He had to put a Mexican blanket, I think they call it a serape, in the back window, because he kept having cholos roll up on him, because there was some Armenian guys that had that same car. So he had to make a distinction to show that, hey, he literally told me, explained it, why he put it there. Because we asked him one time, because it was like really overtly Mexican. And as much as it's, you know, listen to Mexican music with them, Maná and Caifanas and shit like that, and they had pride in being Mexican, it was not to the extent where you were like throwing Mexican flags on your fucking car and shit like that. So that's basically what he was doing. So it became a little like, hey, what you got this for? He's like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, I don't want to get fucking shot. We're like, what are you talking about? He's like, man, you know how many times cholos have rolled up on me and hit me up and be like, hey, you from Armenian Pride? And I'm like, no, do I look Armenian? And they're like, what? And they like question me, because there are some Armenians that have the same car. So in 1993, though, despite all of that beef, that ended. By 95, it was completely put a stop to it, because by then the Mexican Mafia had realized the revenue capabilities of Armenian organized crime. And it has multi-levels, because you have the street level, which are the guys that look like Mexican cholos, but there's only 250 of them at any time, and they're basically like a sacrifice to the public eye, a distraction. Like, oh, this is what Armenian crime looks like. When Armenian crime looks way more sophisticated than Italian organized crime. And it relies on a lot of women for the components, like a lawyer that there's a driver that drove his truck. He claimed to fall asleep because of a medication. I would go so far as to say, but they closed the case. The sheriff, the Villanueva, the sheriff, LA sheriff, who I'm thinking is like in a Hoover situation where these fools have dirt on him. He let this thing go. This driver ran into the sheriff run team, the deputy training run team, murdered 3 deputies and maimed literally dozens more. Something like 20 plus other deputies were injured. Some of them lost limbs, and some of them had permanent injuries that'll disable them for the rest of their lives in one way or another. And within, I say 48 now to be nice, but if I remember correctly, it was within 24 hours, the guy was released without charges, case closed, because this lawyer named Kazarian swooped in and argued that, hey, you don't have any proof because a reputation is a legally, has legal stance in English common law. And this guy's family at one point had ties to law enforcement. So this lawyer came in and said he's depressed and he's supposed to be on medication. And I don't know if he didn't take his medication or he accidentally took too much medication, but it was a simple explanation, all based on medical. You got HIPAA coming in, and then within 24 hours, you had a guy that killed 3 fucking cops and maimed even more, so many more, 7 times more at least, walk out of the fucking system without any charges whatsoever, because he was a Hispanic guy from a Armenian lawyer representing him. So my point is that the Mexican mafia, they realized to get away with that kind of thing, that kind of hit in America, you gotta have a lot of money. You gotta have a lot of pull. And it goes with 2. I say there was a Armenian couple that got busted. They stole $18 million in COVID relief funds. They were arrested in San Francisco. Los Angeles argued that they should be prosecuted down here because they lived in the valley. So they got extradited from San Francisco to Los Angeles. When they got to Los Angeles, the LA prosecuting office released them without monitoring and on bail, without a flight risk. They used the argument that people that came to their defense, people with reputable standing in other municipalities, I believe Glendale municipality had a big deal to do with it, were like, hey, these people have kids, they were born in America. These people have kids that were born in America, they're not a flight risk. Well, those people were a flight risk, and they got away, and they fled the country, and they left their kids, because probably with the people that talked the government into letting them go in the first place. So, like I said, and that was a federal crime because it was dealing with federal COVID funds. So, the Mexican mafia was way ahead of the game, and they saw the earning potential and the potential of being friends with this scale of organized crime in the United States. So, what they did is they made a deal. They told the Armenians, look, what we're going to do is we're going to make a rule so that every Mexican gang in the area knows they cannot touch you guys, your gang. Again, it's just a front organization. And at the threat of violent punishment or even death. Because in exchange, the Armenian organized crime pays out a percentage. And now, when you had the rise of, first it was Sinaloa cartel 10 years ago, when they started taking over, what Sinaloa was doing, they were running all of the weed farms at first, the illegal weed farms that the sheriffs were busting up. And in one sense, the sheriffs were actually helping Cartel Jalisco take Cartel Sinaloa out of the picture by doing all these raids. And but they were getting the water, because the catch is when you have a weed farm, you need water. And what a lot of people don't know is that in the 90s, I had a friend that was Armenian we used to hang out with, and we were talking one time, and he was telling us how he had saved up $15,000 and he invested it into an almond farm. And we're like, what the fuck, an almond farm? Because we were like 22, 23 years old. Why would you do that? What are you going to do, drink? But I think almond milk wasn't even a big thing then. And he was telling us, oh no, my friends were telling me it's a good investment. Well, fast forward to today, almond farms, they take 900 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of almonds, as opposed to 90 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of like tomatoes. So the almond farms became the source for the water for the illegal weed farms. And then the Armenians own the properties throughout LA legally, because the property owner has to be in bed with the whole system to allow the illegal weed shop to remain there. Because if the property owner doesn't want the weed shop there, they can call the police and tell them this is not a tenant. But if the property owner doesn't complain, the police can only go into the weed shop, tell them to turn off the power, tell them to leave the building, and then drive away. And then literally what happens here in LA, there's more illegal weed shops than Starbucks. The employees wait for the police to leave, open it back up, and business starts interrupted only for at the most an hour. So I'm gonna go see my movie. So actually, I wasn't planning on doing this, but I just came out of the movie, and I like to. This is fucking actually hilarious because it's part of the movie in one sense too. Yeah, damn, it's pretty crazy because considering what I had just spontaneously turned my post into, and it was all based off of seeing that tow truck that I associate with the organized crime that runs Glendale, dominates the fentanyl manufacturing in the United States, and for the most part has co-opted the municipality of Burbank through infiltration. I don't know if on the scale of Glendale is it. That's the whole thing. So anyways, this is not new. It's a narrative I've been saying since May of 2020. It's just developed it over time to what it is now. And what I found interesting about the movie was that the movie is basically the fucking same story that I've been fucking saying. And even one of the last points that I made before I went into the movie was that this particular organized crime, different from the Italian organized crime, has a significant female factor in it. And this is the Armenian organized crime that's tied to the Russian mob. They call it the Russian mob, but it's run by a guy that was born. He's a Ukraine. He was up until I think around 2000 and maybe 2010 at the latest. The guy that runs this whole fucking thing was a dual citizenship of Ukraine and Israel, Mogolovich. But that's a deep history right there too, because you got to get into that gets into Stalin, because Stalin did the Ukrainian genocide through famine for the most part, and it's killed something like 3 to 5 million Ukrainians. Now, that's just the superficial academia plot. Beneath that, it's the people that were, because Stalin didn't do anything himself. Stalin never actually killed anybody. It was people that were in his service and his advisors and whatnot that perpetrated the crimes and basically helped him develop the systems to implement the plans. So history is always trying to make the fucking singular central figure to be like the genius. But when I was fortunate to stumble across a book that's said to be Mao's personal journal before he was anything. Some journalists went to trace the guy's life story and went to his birth village and claimed to come across his personal journal, and he published it. It's fucking, it took a while. So I read that because I was getting into trying to learn Chinese, Mandarin, and I get distracted because of my, whatever you want to call it. I call it ADD, but I'm starting to consider something different. Right hemispheric acoustic interpretation of reality. So, where it's just absorbing more information at a single time than just a single line of information. So to somebody that is just a left hemispheric person, that's lineality and visual, an acoustic interpretation and absorption of information seems like chaos. So it must be something wrong with the individual. So this is where that kind of goes from. So, okay, let me stay. Gotta stay on track for you people. So, okay, Stalin, who did the crimes. Oh, Mao. So, Mao's journal is literally a fucking an idiot, a fucking deranged, completely fucking psychopathic. No matter what you think of me and my paranoia, like my videos recently dealing with this fucking bitch that I claim is an agent of Cartel Jalisco New Generation, and her treatment of the dog, to show you or to convey how Mao would have taken it. Mao literally had journal entries where he was writing about passing by a neighbor's house and the dog telling him to kill people, and him conveying in his journal that, you know, this dog is trying to fucking manipulate him. So he's absolutely oblivion fucking insane. Later on, as I got more into the understanding of the role of, now in this movie I saw Renfield. It's important to note, when I read the book Dracula, I hated the book. It's the book, I hate the fucking book. It was the most difficult book for me to read. But I told myself, oh Tim, since I dropped out of school, you know, you gotta pursue academia. If they do it for instruction, then you could do it for your own edification, and that doesn't mean you just read what you like. So let's get this punk ass bitch right here. So if I ever see him again, I could have a right to fucking kill that fucking rat shit. So in it, so the significance of this is, I already knew about the gist of the movie is because I go to the movies all the time, so I know the previews. But I don't research fucking movies. I don't even pick movies based on what I want to see. I pick them based on time. This was the first movie today. I plan on seeing another movie. So I went to the first showing, 11:55. And I came to the theater that I disliked the most. And this is the only theater of all the ones in Burbank showing Renfield. I had no intention of seeing it based on the previews, because to me it looked like fucking a shitty movie. I actually liked it a lot. And in a Jungian synchronicity type of fashion, it had to deal with New Orleans, which is a very significant city to me. I got my New Orleans brand right here from the first night I was in New Orleans. I used to be roommates with two sisters that were their descendants had been in New Orleans for basically longer than America existed. And I've been talking about New Orleans a little bit more, I guess. Have I? Sort of? Yeah, well, because I did a cooking video the other day, and that brought the sisters back up. So that's us, because I was trying to figure out, like, man, I was just basically talking about this, because they're from New Orleans. They taught me how to cook. So I remember when I went there, stories. I went there 6 times. So the plot that I did, you don't get this in any way, shape, or form from the previews, is that there's an organized crime group called the Lobos family, which is also very significant, because what I've been doing a lot lately is associating quotes that I get from Plato, that I got from in Latin from a movie called Black Cat from 1934, that talk about how in Greek mythology the idea of a werewolf comes from somebody who, it's not a real, they never thought it was a real thing. They associated it with a person who turned to a predator, like now the interesting thing is they associate Dracula or vampires with narcissistic personality disorder, and I got this from a movie Men, where shapeshifter, narcissistic personality disorder, has a great relation to shapeshifters. And then in this, Dracula is traditionally part of his quality as a character is shape-shifting. So that made sense in my acoustic symbolic interpretation of shit. So then, but the werewolf has to do with, like, there's a Greek myth where Zeus wants to look around the land, and he comes to this kingdom run by a guy named Lycaon or something like that. And when he goes in there, all the people are like, oh wow, he's in immortal form hiding, and people are like bow down to him, except when the king gets wind that he's a god, he comes up with the idea, well, fucking let me rather than bow down to this power, because at the time gods were symbols of natural phenomena, not so much as the way we see them today. So it's like, how can I conform my life to natural phenomena? That's what the people before this guy did. He's like, well, let me see if I could destroy this natural phenomena. And the way to do that in mythology was to get a god to eat human flesh. It's not necessarily cannibalism, but just to devour human flesh. So he kills some guys and puts them in a stew and some other rotisserie type dishes, and he tries to serve them to Zeus, and Zeus gets all pissed off, and he's like, okay, now for you being this corrupt piece of shit tyrant, I'm going to turn you into a wolf, so that forever you have, that's basically the origin of the werewolf story. It's, morphed over time. So I've been equating, and there's a quote from Black's Law Dictionary that says something about, a certain level of criminal turns into, takes the face of a wolf, the head of a wolf, the mind of a wolf, a predator. Wolves never kill alone. They're not isolated killers. They only kill in packs. And the quote from the Black Cat movie is, a wolf, and this is where we get the wolf in sheep clothing kind of thing, is there's an old Latin adage that says a wolf may change his skin, but he doesn't change his character. So I've been putting those quotes up from the movie and from Black's Law Dictionary and from Ovid's poem about this Greek myth with Zeus and Lycaon. And so seeing that this family that is the symbol in this movie of organized crime as the wolf really resonated with me on a personal level. Plus it was being in New Orleans. The significance of New Orleans is having from the sisters is New Orleans, like I just said, is older than America, which is a lot of something that most Americans don't understand. So this movie's, as an artistic Morse code, is conveying this struggle that the American civilian population has had against organized crime and the higher structures. And Dracula comes from Europe. And what I identified Dracula with, finally, when I got through with that fucking terrible fucking book, is and then because I had already read Thus Spoke Zarathustra from Nietzsche, and he's really anti-state on that. And as I delved more into it, I started to realize that I remembered that there were some images that were very significant to establishing Dracula as a bad guy in the book that were very much reminiscent to me from Nietzsche's images to establish the state as a monster, which he kept calling it. A vicious monster that lies and lies and says we are the people, and from the state it owns nothing, it steals everything, and it feeds off of the dead, like it feeds off of people. So all of these things that were from this book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which I believe was prior to 1880, came out in Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was like in 1910 or to 1914 or something like that, maybe even 1918. So I've associated Dracula as a literary character that symbolizes monarchy and the curse, essentially, that monarchy has on the human existence and human psyche and human daily life. So, for example, and I got that because when I got into Mary Wollstonecraft, who most people only equate her to a feminist, but she's an anti-monarchist. She has this great line that from ministers to monarchs, which the world is long from freeing itself from, has not yet been abolished. You know, it stops the progress of the human mind. So I came to associate Dracula with this type of mental illness. Subservience to authority. And this goes with Stanley Milgram, who's a Jewish guy. Milgram is actually pomegranate in Hebrew, and the pomegranate in mythology is the fruit of the underworld, the fruit of dreams, the fruit of Hades. And not this conspiracy, this is just acoustic, artistic, maybe even autistic compilation of information in a non-linear, I would like to say 5D, honestly, as like in, not 5G, 5D, as beyond 3D, beyond time and space and shape and form. So, which would equate to Marshall McLuhan's concept. I mean, it's not his concept. He got it from fucking other people's work. But that's how people like him and me work. We're great plagiarists. We're our own parasitic entity in a way. And we survive off of the work of other people to help convey our message, because the way we talk is fucking literally insane. It's not comprehensible to a left-sided linear psychology. We're all over the place. We're abstract. We're fucking chaotic. And people like to pretend, like that guy, the artist Pollock, to be able to produce an experience of it. But once you might be able to dip your toe in it, but once you got to dig in, and you believe that you're faced with a choice between that lineality that you've only known since you were destroyed, because you were all start in the right hemisphere as children. Actually, we all start in the womb as both. So, actually, no, we can't, because visual is not really available to us. So, no, yeah, we start with our right hemisphere. Then we get out. And then that right hemisphere begins to be squashed to the left hemisphere in visuality. And that's how we learn, though. That's how we absorb the society that we're a part of. Monkey see, monkey do. It's not a disrespect. It's the most powerful tool that the human brain has to work with. And I'm gonna put a pause real quick while I get in my pad, because I gotta go to the bathroom. Okay, so compiling all this information into a acoustic. I would say Joseph Campbell talks about how Plato equated the soul to a circle. Now that is very 2D. I think we can all agree on that, no matter how all-encompassing it may seem. Now, in this story that I'm trying to do, and I'm not gonna lie, you call it egotistical or whatever you want, but I completely self-identify with the struggle of Renfield. And that's conveying to the general public the realities of these very ominous but almost overwhelming, psychologically overwhelming powers. So it's great that the people that he first meets are people that are struggling just to accept the power struggles that they have in their own regular daily life with regular people. So coming to them and bringing this notion, like me, Dracula is real, which I'm literally telling people. And as Dracula is monarchy, the existence of monarchy on the planet Earth within the human species is Dracula. Oh, and the catch too is like Renfield, the emphasis on him being a lawyer, and him being a lawyer that's in pursuit of making a lot of money off of a real estate deal. You get into all of these laws that I have shared, all these freaking quotes that have to do with Do I have a phone in here? Oh, no. Okay. That I have to share with like papal law and shit like that, because a lot of people don't understand that the Vatican, the Catholic Church, is a monarchy that have realized that, hey, if we market ourselves as a religion, just the same thing as the church, the Anglican Church. This is how you got to understand that the English form of government is a theocratic society. The crown is sovereign because the sovereign, this is all, I have all of this shit here. All these quotes that I keep sharing. So, and the people, Martyr 8, Martyr 8, Martyr 8, with a very dark license plate cover. So, okay, so, so these people, you know, yes, okay, I get it, I'm crazy. And then on top of that, so that was already, I was doing that shit. Then, once you identify basically the top of the pyramid, sorry, I have to use this. Oh, I was talking about the sphere and the circle. So anyways, Plato equates the soul to a circle. So Joseph Campbell does a whole lecture and he draws out a whole diagram showing you the circle. There's a dot in the middle of it, which is the original symbol that goes tens of thousands of years back for the sun. What has to do with the acoustic awareness that there was never any flat. No one ever believed before lineality, the linear psychology, that the world was flat. The very symbol of the sun is a dot with a circle around it. And it, as 2D as that is, that was a 2D attempt to convey an acoustic, multi-dimensional, not in the sense of Marvel, but multi-dimensional in the sense of beyond time and space, understanding that this little dot in the middle emanates in a greater sphere around it. And without them being able to convey the spherical component of it, it is inferred. That got lost, though, with the rise of, according to Marshall McLuhan, where's the book? That got lost with the rise of the right hemisphere. Oh, that got lost with the rise of the right hemisphere. Oh, actually, it's more this one, come to think of it. And, oh shoot, I got to get a diagram real quick. And the lineality, because once we got into the left hemisphere, once we got into the left, you know, I do that because over here in America, it's kind of the reverse. They portray it as the reverse of Europe. It's not really. So, you know, the left is liberal and the right is conservative. The red is conservative and the blue is liberal. In Europe, it's different. The blue bloods are the conservatives who have power and want to conserve the power structure as is. And I mean, it's not really that different over here once you get past all the bullshit. But when literacy and the alphabet, which is why the biggest corporation on the planet right now is called Alphabet Inc. And it owns Google, it owns YouTube, and owns all kinds of shit, is because they know that the alphabet is a means of mass military domination. It's basically a standing army. Marshall McLuhan talks about the myth of the origin of the alphabet, that the king Cadmus, the Greek king that came up with it, said to came up with it, got it because he took the teeth from a dragon, and then from the teeth of a dragon came the letters of the alphabet. And then they put them in the ground, and they came out of the ground as soldiers. Oh well. It was a nice idea, but it doesn't look like I'm going to get it, because I'm not that organized. So, but my whole point is, if you see the, I just noticed something else too. So, come to think of it, in the Marvel movie Endgame or whatever it is, I don't know if it's Infinity Wars or Endgame, Tony Stark's character comes up with this design in order to provide the key to transcending time and space so that they can save the day. I just noticed that right now. I was trying to find a picture of it because he has a thing where it breaks up the brain into the hemispheres. You know what? Maybe it's in the other book. So my point is this: Plato said the soul is a circle. Now we're right, perfect. Look at that right away. Oh, I just flipped this. Okay, booyah. All right, see how this works? Now, Marshall McLuhan, also in a quote that I found today, in an interview that I found today and I posted, he was very adamant. He claimed to be right-sided of the brain. He never claimed to be both sides. But he does have in another quote in one of these books, in the Orange Book, there is such thing as a unified field of the mind. He never ever asserted to be an individual that accessed both sides. And this kind of goes with the movie Lucy and using more and more. And they equated, this is the important thing to note, all of these fantastic fantasies are to dissuade people from thinking that it's worth it, because you can destroy the significance of something by making it seem so grand that you dissuade or discourage or create despair or an overwhelming sense of overwhelming, which equates to exhaustion. And exhaustion is a very real thing, as conveyed in this book. So that at the height of exhaustion comes conformity. And what is the height of conformity? Mimicry, replication, copying. So that's when people start to shut down. The little kid at first doesn't want to conform. He wants to assert himself in a world that he doesn't even know about. But gradually, the forces above him raise him. When you raise him correctly, and this is where English, when you understand when you get beyond the lineality of, well, raise means like the Lion King. No, raise means to destroy and reduce to ashes and utterly vanquish to the ground. So raising a child in English, Anglo-Saxon culture is literally destroying their mind and reducing them to an automaton, monkey see, monkey do. I'm too exhausted to come up with any actual ideas or concepts. Let me just do whatever I can to fit in. And this is why those cultures are so reliant on rank. And this is why organized crime is exactly the same structure as what we call civilized society. Because it's not really civilized. It's definitely not civilian society, because the concept of a civilian society is fundamentally what goes along with, I just watched this movie too with Sean Penn on YouTube. It's an alright movie. All the King's Men. So I don't know too much about the guy, but I know enough about Huey P. Long, who happens to be Louisiana. Now that we're on this, here's my brand right here. Happens to be on the subject, that his whole vision for America was a civilian society. The definition of a civilian society is what I have come to, in a play on words in my poetic exercise, is a rankless society. Because there are no ranks. You need ranks to create an apartheid state. So Machiavelli, and this goes all the way back to the Mongols, because in this book right here, it talks about how Genghis Khan, because he couldn't maintain control of every place he wanted to maintain control of. So what Genghis Khan did to maintain control over China when he went west, when he went west to conquer everything, kill and conquer everything else, he left a ruling class, but he couldn't, at the time, he couldn't leave Chinese people to rule over Chinese people. So he created a class of rulers in Tibet. And this is why you have the beef between China and Tibet today still. Because this book says that when Genghis Khan created the lamas, the Dalai Lamas, to disrupt the Tibetan society, which was a Buddhist society, a non-monarchy society, in order to facilitate the management as a suzerainty is the word in English. And America is a suzerainty. The Constitution is just a contract. It's just a piece of paper. And part of the function of a formalized suzerainty is for public display of consent. There has to be a national feast, and that's what Thanksgiving is. That's why nobody knows what the true origin of Thanksgiving is, and they have come up with all these different theories. So, actually, I've seen that one around. That's actually, I think, a cop, and he's a fucking asshole for having his car like that. Okay, so what the Dalai Lamas, when they figured, well, we work for the Mongols, what limits do we have? So they started instituting punishments against the Chinese the same way the English did against the Irish. Actually, a little bit more brutal. So one thing about this book called How the Irish Saved Civilization is a great book. You could do it in audio. It's a sad book in the sense when you understand how stupid the fucking Irish are for doing it. But anyway, and how stupid they are to this day because they still identify either Christian. Their conflict is, well, are we Christian or are we Catholic? That's how fucking pathetic they are. But they conquered still, so whatever. I got hope in them. So but anyways, in the book it conveys that the Irish were the only peasantry or public or, subjects that were required under the threat of corporal punishment to bow down to their very landlords. So when the landlord was coming, they had to bow. Just like in other places, they could only bow to the king, to the monarchs or the royal family. So, and you get into a lot of the shit about like the Irish famine was manufactured intentionally to clear land for nobles to take over by bringing the bacteria over to Ireland because they knew what it would do to the potatoes. And at the same time, when the famine was happening, documents have been, because of how anal the left side of the brain is, they still keep a lot of fucking records. So at the time, the English nobility were selling beef, but because they didn't want all that beef on their estates in England, they used their land in Ireland, and they sold more fucking beef during the years of the Irish famine when the Irish were dying by the tens of thousands, I think the hundreds of thousands, if not 1 to 3 million or something like that, than they had sold in like the years surrounding, before and after it, because they were literally clearing the land to do that. So it gets really deep, and this goes back to Mao too, because but let me just finish with this. The Tibetans started instituting, if the Chinese disrespected, or when you say disrespected, it just basically means if the Tibetan person felt like, hey, I want to fuck your daughter, I want to slap you, I want you to lick my feet, whatever it was, and the person said no, that was disrespecting. And the Tibetans started instituting mutilations where they like cut off a finger, cut off a hand, kind of like the Leopold thing did in the Congo. To the point when the Mongols got word of it, they came back and they were like, whoa, that goes against everything we believe. I mean, yeah, we will kill everybody in our sight, but the people that are alive, they're alive, and they should be treated like they're alive, and we do not believe in mutilation of the living people. So they had to check the Dalai Lamas and bring them down a level. So going back to Mao with this, wow, that's close to my last name, Cafferty too. So going back to Mao, you have, I came up with the idea that Mao stands for, and this goes with Dracula. You have to understand how Dracula, the image of Dracula and Mao go together, because Mao was a fucking nut who couldn't hold a serious thought, but that made him a perfect tool for Anglican, that's why I call Mao manufactured Anglican organization. It's never one man. It's the people that do it. Stalin with the Ukrainian genocide. The reason the Ukrainian genocide actually happened, you can go to the Jewish encyclopedia and they, without knowing, they are telling you straight up that this is the reason the Ukrainian genocide even happened was because Stalin didn't trust Slavic people. He thought that they were fucking backstabbing, two-timing, fucking worthless, drunk motherfuckers. He surrounded himself with Jewish people who he felt were successful, had it together, who were pragmatic, and who had no loyalties to anything other than the pursuit of power. And towards that end, the Jewish people that were around him convinced Stalin, hey, you know what? Because they had already had the vision of creating a Jewish homeland. But at the time, the only Jewish homeland that had existed since Vespasian, essentially, and Josephus in 60 AD was the Khazarian Empire, which is now just north of where the Black Sea. So the Black Sea was the southern part of it, and it was pretty big. And that was a Turkish group of people that would now identify with Turkey, who when they were pagans. When they started taking control, what you had is a Muslim segment, because the Muslims ended up recruiting the Mongols. That's where you get Tamerlane and stuff like that. So you had this. And then whatever side you were on, got economic benefits. So you had the Muslim side going to the Khazarians saying, hey, why don't you do business with us? We're better than the European Christians. Then the Christians were coming over and saying, hey, don't you want to do power as well? We've been around longer. So then the Turkic Khazarians, Turks ain't no fucking joke. That's why I love Turkey. They're like, okay, look, here what we're going to do. We're going to have a conference here, and you guys present your argument, and you guys present your argument. And the Muslims are like, hey, we're newer, we're expansive. Look at our armies are bigger, because that's one thing that Islam has always been. That's why they were able to do two pillars of conquest in the year 711. They both started in 711. That was the beginning of the conquest of India, or the Indus Valley, and the beginning of the conquest of Spain started in 711. It took 7 years in Spain. Took a little bit longer in India, bigger population. So, but it was massive, just genocide. They would have armies of 50,000 or 100,000 fucking Muslims that would surround villages of 15,000 or 30,000 Indians, Buddhists, Hindus at the time. Buddhism was very prominent it was probably the most prominent religion. So the Hindus were like, hey, you know what? The Muslims literally came over into India in the year 711, no fucking joke. And they said, hey, they told the Hindus, look, okay, this is what we want. You guys believe in a lot of gods, okay? That's fine. We only believe in one God, but you guys believe in a lot of gods. Those Buddhists, they don't believe in any gods. We can agree that that's evil, right? And the Hindus are like, hey, well, fuck it. So the Muslims slaughtered all of the Buddhists. Buddhism is the smallest. Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism has more motherfucking people in India than Buddhist has in India. And that's the birthplace of Buddhism. And that's still from the year 711 because of how successful the mass murder conquest was. But then once they were done killing off the Buddhists, then they started killing off the Hindus. And that's when the Hindus started doing the practice of sati, which was later... the British take credit for stopping the practice of sati, where a wife was burned with her husband, because initially the practice of sati was that when the Hindu men, because the Buddhist men were not warrior class, they didn't have that, so they were easy to fucking eviscerate. Whatever that happened to the Jews was basically, you can multiply that by what happened to the Buddhist in order to eliminate it completely from the very psychology of the people from which it originated. So, but once the Hindus were the only ones left, then the Buddhists were like, hey, you guys believe in a lot of gods? You guys are fucking the evil ones now. We're going to kill all of you. Your women, your children, your elderly. So, and it was not a conversion thing. It was a land grab. And this is where you get the tension going on right now between Hindus and Muslims. This is what this stems from. So the Muslims would get these massive armies. They would surround these villages and towns that the entire population was smaller than the fucking number of Muslim men that were soldiers. And the men of the Indian men would be like, hey, we're gonna go out and fight. So they used to have a ceremony and like pray to the gods and do all these rituals and then go out and fight. Well, it started getting around that once the men were eviscerated, because they were less than a quarter of the forces that they were facing, if sometimes only 10%, but they thought it was noble. They thought, hey, we're going to be courageous and, follow the stories. Well, the Muslim men would get into the village and they would rape everything, little boys, little girls, women, anything that could, except for old men, everything got raped. Everything got raped and then everything got murdered. So the Indians started to realize, okay, this is a bad plan. So after over a decade of this process of genocide going on, they reversed it, and the Indians would gather in the center of the valley, in the center of the villages or towns, and they would kill all of their own kids and wives and elderly and set them on fire, and then go fight to the death against these horrible, disgusting, putrid, nasty, vile, Islamic scum-sucking pigs. So Mao, the way Mao works into this is that the English realized, MI6 literally realized, okay, we could funnel money into this motherfucker like Osama bin Laden, and he'll do whatever we say. And whatever comes, he'll say whatever we tell him to say. And whatever he says, the people that he rewards will listen to him. So how do you make Mao a national hero? Well, England understood. You kill 70 million Chinese people. And the survivors, they get the point. To where today, they are still heroes, just like in Stalin. So Stalin was presented with this idea, hey, let's go get rid of these Ukrainian motherfuckers. They're not even really Russian. They're just, what kind of Slavic? They're like half Slavics. So Stalin's like, fucking, okay, let's do it. Do whatever you want. You guys are in charge. So the Jewish bureaucrats in Russia, it was the Soviet Union, organized the Ukrainian genocide because what they saw was, hey, from the Khazarian thing, they saw creating Crimea as Israel. But once they got that done, Stalin's ego kicked in, and Stalin was like, no, I don't want that, because if we have another war, then the first place they're going to go through is they're going to go through Crimea, a Jewish Crimea. So that makes me too vulnerable. That makes the Soviet Union too vulnerable. He's like, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll support taking back Palestine and creating that as the Jewish homeland. Don't you guys want to go back to where you started from? So if you want to understand the real origin of the modern state of Israel, you got to understand that it was Stalin that came up with the idea, because he was Stalin from giving up land that the Jewish people had killed all these people. They thought once we kill them and we clear the land off, we should be able to take it. And why do they want the Crimea specifically? Because the whole thing with the Ukraine during the Soviet Union and even before that is it's considered like Mexico over here is the most fertile land in the Western Hemisphere. Mexico, you can grow food every season. All year round, you could grow food. It's not as fertile in the Ukraine, but the Ukraine was known during the Soviet era as the breadbasket of the Soviet Union, and it provided something like 90% of the fucking food that fed Russia. So, okay, so that's Dracula, all right? So, organized crime, monkey see, monkey do. They want to be like the big fish. So, as much as they report we're rebels, we're against it, no, their structure is exactly based on it to replicate it. And in this movie, why I've been saying that women have a big part in the Armenian syndicate that runs Glendale and is thus virtue and is making all the fentanyl that's helping Cartel Jalisco dominate the Western Hemisphere. The lady that runs the Lobo family, the boss that runs I gave that away. The boss that runs the Lobo family is a woman. And it's not unheard of, because you have like the cocaine queen, and there was another boss in it was a rare case, but over in I think it was in the Camorra, which is from Milan in Italy. You have the Camorra in Milan, and you have the Nangrante in Calabria, and I think they might go up to Naples, and then you have the Sicilians, and you have a couple other ones too. So the struggle that Renfield has is conveying to the people the severity of the threat. Well, first of all, the reality of the threat, and then the severity of the threat. And the interesting thing, though, is this is why I like the movie Black Adam, because in Black Adam, this is one of the things that they always put in their stories, that Black Adam is actually very different. Is that so that you need Dracula's blood well, spoiler alert, they need Dracula's blood to basically repair all the damage done by the system of all of this corruption that created mayhem and murder. This is why you have in all the Marvel movies and Disney movies and Universal films and ABC and all of this shit like that, and a lot of literature, you have this notion that to become King Arthur, I have that book too, to become the hero, you have to become the monarch. You have to assume the role of authority, because the role of authority is what creates the sense of stability. And this is a very subtle method of manipulation that I found it very interesting that the movie Black Adam, when The Rock was finally given the opportunity to take advantage of the power that he had overthrown and to assume the role of the monarch, he destroyed the throne. He killed the king and then he destroyed the throne. So that's what I meant is by a civilian society is a rankless society. And Black Adam, the movie, actually recognizes that in one sense, artistically. This is, you see that? This is the reverse of that, is that in a suzerainty, you know you're in a suzerainty when you have a foreign nation's laws measuring you. The word rule and measure and govern, just like in mechanics, a governor is like a thing that regulates the quantities, that determines what goes in, how much goes in. So a rule, a measure, a ruler. So you got a ruler too. You measure, okay? So when you have a foreign system of laws ruling, measuring, and governing your people's daily life, determining what's right and wrong, that is the fucking definition of a suzerainty. Because a people that are, sovereignty is not the correct term, because sovereignty has to do with God. A people who are sentient do not conform to authority. And therefore, the structure that they have does not conform to authority. Like in Black's Law Dictionary, one of the things that I started to discover is like our word regulations comes from the word regis, king. Why does a civilian society's concept of normal, which normal is not what you think it is, normal, the definition of normal according to Webster's 1934 dictionary is to conform to a type or a standard. It is not to act and behave in your natural state. Well, I guess I said monkey see, monkey do is our natural state, so maybe I'm wrong. But regular, regulate, you have, then you get into, so if the people that write stuff or people that act, what do they get paid? They get paid royalties. What are royalties? Why do we have royalties? Because royalties are the property of the king. Roy is the French term for king. That's all in Black's Law Dictionary. So all of these subtle inferences in our society act as psychological barriers to obstruct the development of a truly civilian society in which we form a system of government that in and of itself exists to combat, prevent, and repulse the influence of rank and station and class. So all of the entertainment that has to do with entering the tane, and the tane is a reflective surface on a mirror that is a symbol of the psyche, because the way that the psyche, so you see here, my broken mirror, where's it at? you see the glass, and then you see underneath the glass, detained. So our psyche determines what's reality through the tane, through the reflection. So when you enter the tane, you're putting images, you're putting an image into the tane, and oh, that's what I look like. That must be really me. So this is why entertainment is so brutal and sophisticated, as well as advertising is. According to Marshall McLuhan, he has a thing, advertising is not meant for conscious consumption. Well, entertainment isn't meant for conscious consumption either, if I can extend Marshall McLuhan a little bit. So, overall, through interpreting the art that I see today, I recognize that the American public is fully aware of and exhausted with the struggle that we are forced to face against these authoritarian structures that are criminal in nature. And the criminals don't want to get rid of the criminals. So it's very significant is in this movie when, so like I was saying just recently too, I've been saying how, you know, I have no confidence in my devices. I mean, I'm going up against a multi-billion-dollar fucking cartel that my vision of it is being with Mogovich. So it's like a fucking hundreds of $billion operation, global operation. I don't think that I have any privacy. You know, I've made a video yesterday, and then it was the only video ever that I made where the screen was blacked out. Only the outer rim, the very outer rim of it was where you could see the image like underneath the black screen. And as I went fast forward and backwards, swiping the little thing, the image tried to come out, but it was completely distorted. And I felt that video was significant for my own, an assessment. So I wasn't shocked, like, oh my gosh, they destroyed a video that's important to me. Wow, oh my gosh. Well, I mean, yeah, they fucking have total access to every fucking thing that I have. I don't have any privacy. So in this movie, the bad guys brag about, and this is just one small crime family in New Orleans, which is a very significant thing. They don't even claim to be international. That's another very important thing, I believe. They brag that they tapped into the NSA surveillance system, which they don't really do because it's way deeper, because the NSA surveillance system is cell phones and fucking Wi-Fi TVs and Xboxes and fucking crazy shit you don't even know. Put it to you like this. So people today think that the surveillance of the world is like the first time it's ever been global surveillance. Well, the institution of Catholic confessions was a form of global surveillance. That was revealed in a book. I don't have the book, but I have quotes on it. It's something about political theory. It was just a little rare book in 1964. It's like some kind of analysis book. But it talks about how when so Calvin took over Geneva, I guess, and then he was kicking out the Catholics. So one of the ways that they kept the thing of confession, or the system of confession, because people were confessed and people don't want to go to hell. So you had little kids and families and wives go and they're like, go to the priest. Oh my gosh, my husband, he's doing this Catholic ritual. He's burning our son died, and he's in such despair that he burned a candle, which was a Catholic ritual, and Calvin was against that. So they have records of this man being arrested for lighting a candle in a closet, which he believed was all by himself. But his wife is outside the closet going, oh my gosh, doing whatever. She's not doing the Catholic sign, but she's praying to Calvin's God, version of Jesus. Oh no, my husband's going to die. What do I do? So she wants to relieve herself of that burden. And so she conveys to the clergy, oh, this is the sin. I didn't tell anybody. And then all of a sudden her husband is arrested. So then the next level of sophisticated, and this has to do, when you get this one right here, this will boggle your mind, because you have to actually understand this is a factual reality. When Israel was made a state, one of the ways that they were given economic aid, in a sense, was they were given business licenses to do international business, to give them a footing. And one of those businesses that they were given a monopoly over was telephone calls. So now all of our shit goes through satellites. And that's why the NSA has total dominance. You don't understand the fucking level of surveillance that Snowden was trying to convey. I just watched the movie Megan, the little 3D, the little robot thing, and she's looking at the girl's face and she's monitoring and determining stress and trust and anxiety and all kinds of stuff like that. This is high level fucking shit now, and that goes all through satellites though. But the telephone actually, the reason you go online too, you can plug in a little light. You can convert the telephone plugs, because still to this day, if you have a telephone plug in your house, there's power going to it. A little bit of power, because your phone was a two-way microphone, right? And we equate hanging it up to be turning it off. But that was just for billing. Every phone line that was available went through Israel. And every phone was always a two-way radio. So, you understand what I'm saying? Wrap your head around that. The whole theatrics of the FBI going out and getting surveillance to tap somebody's phone is literally just theater. Just to make the minions, the plebes and the peasants, believe that there is a system that is trying to protect them, but it's just trying to protect the system of rank. The Dracula system that feeds off of us. Like Thus Spoke Zarathustra is basically Dracula Part 1. And with that, and the other video, I close.